the plan is that I'll go through the water, watering, irrigation, all those sort of issues, and then go into the fertilizer. I'll show you a lot of pictures. I want to cover quite a bit of material. So we'll try our best, and then when they see you are tired, we'll have a short break and then continue. So I put my talk, water from heaven to harvest. Is spelling all right, heaven? You have not, nobody has gone there yet. We expect to see there, I guess, all of us. Basically because water comes from heaven in the biblical references, Quran references, that God said, we have given you the water, so it's our responsibility to keep it pure and wholesome, not contaminated. And of course, organisms have evolved in and around water. We're still debating how did we evolve from sea level to, I think basically, I always say that I consist of 100 trillion cells. And each cell, the cells are organized into 110 different types of organs. How those cells originated still is a mystery. Scientists are trying, but water has played a very big role in that. Almost every plant process is affected directly or indirectly by water. We must understand the physical, chemical, and biological properties of water and take advantage in crop management. One of the questions with the previous speaker, Jeff, we were talking about the role of temperature in water. When I see this cold water sitting here, I just shiver because looking at it, I'm not going to absorb it effectively. So the water is not only for plants, but for us as well. And during busy season, we don't drink enough water. And then I walk into the greenhouses and fatigue is set in. Irritable mood is there, the mood changes from high to low. So we are also affected by how much water we drink. 1 to 2% loss of water from body can cause mood changes and mood swings. If busy berry plant season, the loss could be 2 to 5%, which is dangerous. Dangerous means when you are dehydrated, our cell function, exactly like plants, so our cell stop functioning and all the free radicals, body can't get rid of them. Drinks with high sugar cause dehydration as well. Water temperature is also related with this uptake in human beings and plants. And cold water is slow to be absorbed. How many of you don't warm up your water for plants? You still use cold water? Raise your hand. If you, most of you are still cold water. So plants will be cursing you, I guess, that you have not learned anything. So I think we should give them at least 18 degrees centigrade water for better uptake of nutrients. It's quite interesting. When you give them cold water, let's say coming from the well, a little bit warm in the greenhouse at 12, 13 degrees centigrade, it takes about 8 hours before the growing media temperature will go up to 18, 19 degrees centigrade. So for 8 hours, plant is suffering to absorb some nutrient in the system. So I think warm water about 18 to 20 degrees centigrade is a good idea. Check for hydration, dehydration. This is my hand. I want to see how much of you are properly hydrated. So your left side vein should be swollen. How many veins are like that? You are there? Perfect. That's good. You look good. No, you are not there. So whenever you go for a blood test and you can't find your vein, I think that's the you are not rehydrated enough. So keep this as a handy tool that if this vein is collapsed, this means you are dehydrated. I don't want to. There are different communication styles when we talk to each other. This is one joke I got the other day, that how men and women think differently. When our lawnmower broke and wouldn't run, my wife kept hinting to me that I should get it fixed. But somehow I always had something else to take care of first. The shed, the board, the greenhouse, and making beer. Always something more important to me. Finally, she thought of a clever way to make her point. When I arrived home one day, I found her seated in the tall grass, busily slipping away with a tiny pair of scissors to cut the grass. I watched silently for a short time and then went into the house. I was gone only a minute, and when I came out again, I had a toothbrush in my hand and said, "Honey, when you finish cutting the grass, you might as well sweep the driveway." And then you know what happened. The doctors say I will walk again, but I will always have a limp. So men, get smart. Okay? If the wife says, acknowledge the role they are playing in the greenhouse. You know, when you go as a team, there's a different thinking style. They worry too much. If there's a one white fly, she will be chasing it around, and you are not trying to kill that. So remember that. And my wife sat down next to me as I was flipping TV channel. She asked, "What is on TV?" I said, "Dust." And then the fight started. So men are linear thinkers. You know, if wife is asking what on the TV, you said there's a dust there, so that you're challenging right there. So be careful. My wife was hinting about what she wanted for our upcoming anniversary. She said, "I want something shiny that goes from 0 to 150 in about 3 seconds." I got her a bathroom scale. And then the fight started. So I think we have to understand different communication styles.
Dr. Mirza, you should not be giving hints.
I have to give hint to men. You see. If you want to have a good greenhouse business, you have to listen. Beauty of water on a spider web. It's just amazing that this picture I took, the action of water particles on this slightly fatty web. It's just the cohesion of the water together. So these droplets can't evaporate that quickly. So spider will have access to that water for a long period of time. And water droplet and an ant on a leaf, so just sitting there and then trying to stay there a second. So water has a lot of beauties. And global water cycle is always interesting, where our water supplies come in. Just if you look at where I'm here, so water cycle, of course, comes from the right here, snow and rain, come through the runoff area, rivers, of course, forest, of course, and then transpiration, lake evaporation. So there's a constant cycle which is going on. So we use that water for our purpose, and then it's not destroyed. The plant will absorb that water, it will go into the air, and then it's constantly being recycled. Waters come from heaven. I love this picture because I took it. So when the clouds come in, then you have a nice greenhouse. But one cloud I never forget. I was visiting your greenhouse, I think 4 or 5 years ago, berry plant season in May, and that cloud came and such a big rain. Man, that is scary. But the power of water, the floods in southern Alberta, or even here somewhere, you can't do a thing. So always be afraid of the power of water. And when I'm driving, I always look for these type of clouds, stop and take some picture. This is right in Edmonton from our bedroom window. Very, very enjoyable scene, because it's the childhood memory of mine in Pakistan with the monsoon rains. It's such a beautiful, it's hot and dry and parched, and suddenly when those rains come, the soil smell is so beautiful, it's a heavenly smell. And always enjoy those things as well of our body. Clouds and greenhouses, of course. Whenever clouds are there, light is reduced when it's cloudy. Irrigation has to be adjusted, temperature can be reduced. So it's not just saying that, oh, clouds are there. So many times, many plant growers are not aware that when clouds are there, light is reduced, irrigation has to be adjusted. We could skip watering that day. That's where most of the root rots come in, when we don't adjust those watering practices, and we'll talk more. And temperature can be reduced by at least 2 degrees centigrade, especially if it's June or May when the bedding plants are ready, otherwise plant will stretch. So understanding that cloud is not only for water but shade as well. Learning from plants requires seeing, not just looking. My young granddaughter, look at the way her eye, she just did like this to look at it. Whenever you want to look at things, I think you go like this. So power of observation is very important. Now, understanding terminology, when we talk about water, I don't like you to be too scientific on these things, but understanding that what business the plants are. My livelihood is depending on plants. So do I know these terminology? The word transpiration, we call it, loss of water primarily from leaves into the surrounding air from the stomata. Stomata are openings, millions of them per square inch on the underside of the leaf. This is how they look like, and a close-up of stomata is like this. They're just like cells like this, and they close like this, and when the water is fully charged, they will open. So directly depend, their opening and closing directly depend on the status of water inside the cell. There are a few handouts which are still sitting here. If you could, I'll be referring them. There's a whole chapter on this aspect of water status inside the plant, exactly like human beings, like what I showed you. Plant recharge their water supply at night time. Daytime, they're under constant stress. Because of the sunlight, they have to transpire. They have to take up water. They are active. So they're under a negative pressure during the daytime when the lights are available. So it is at night time. So what does it mean is that you must know what is your last watering. Is it 2 hours before sunset or 4 hours before sunset? Or in some cases, when the sky is very clear at night time, then you are growing vegetable, then a night watering will also be required. So remember that at night time, they charge all their water potential inside the cell, they're fully charged. So be alert with that possibility. So guard cells, stomata, and then very, very fascinating how, and the interesting thing is, these stomata are microscopic openings on the underside of the leaf, but those stomata have to meet highly conflicting demands of every part of the plant. Now, stomata will open when the water is fully charged. And we heard from Jeff that potassium is also involved in opening of those stomata. Now, suddenly the cloudy weather comes, or there's something happened to the roots, the stomata have to close. Very high temperature, plants start wilting, so stomata want to close. But if they close, then the carbon dioxide cannot get in. If the humidity is very high, stomata would like to stay open, not close, simply because the pressure difference of water inside the cell and outside is almost the same. So really, if stomatas are the greenhouse manager, they have to look after so many demands of employees. I always like to use plant as a model of management. I'll talk a little bit tomorrow on that. Why can't we learn team building from the plants we are growing? The integrated approach from the roots, how do they communicate with the stomata? And then the stems, the water conducting tissue, is such a high communication. The moment stomata have a stress and they want to close, the message goes so quickly to the roots, hey, stop, I don't need any more water. If there's a miscommunication, what happens is roots still are pumping water, stomata start closing, and then edema occurs. You might have seen on IV geraniums, Many times on winter-grown cucumber, tomatoes as well, this could happen. That's a miscommunication due to some error that the plant is not healthy or too much sugar that day the plant eats, so couldn't think properly. So very, very amazing how these tomatoes have to be kept open. Evaporation is a term, loss of water from any surface. Not actively through stomata, but just evaporation. You have a water tank and water will evaporate based on the dry humidity in the air. And then evapotranspiration is other terminology which is familiar with the plants. Other term is called respiration, the process in which stored food is degraded and energy released, carbon dioxide and water produced. Now, respiration happens primarily at night time, and that is why the food the plant made during the daytime is chopped up and water is released in the air. That's why there's always high humidity in the morning, because plant at night time produce their own carbon dioxide. During the daytime, what they were doing was what we call photosynthesis, the process of making foods by plant by fixing light energy. Carbon dioxide from the air, I'll be dwelling a little bit more on that, plus water making those glucose. And the end product is right here. Your tomatoes, your cucumbers, your peppers, your berry plants, flowering plants. This is the fascination that how same ingredient, water, carbon, oxygen and nutrient, and the product based on the species is you have got there tomatoes, you've got berry plants, you have flowering plants. So basic is the same. So understanding now respiration at night time, photosynthesis during daytime. So if you want to supply carbon dioxide, it has to be done during the daytime. I have seen many growers who got excited, they want to really push the plant, so turn the carbon dioxide at night time, and that could kill the plant. VPD is another term, vapor pressure deficit, the difference between the moisture inside the leaf and air surrounding the leaf. And it's measured as grams per cubic meter of air. So very simple terminology. I think now computers are coming in to give you that data. If you don't have the data, I'll show you a table which is quite useful. But plant will, water is coming from the roots with nutrients, transpiration is taking place, but if the humidity is 100%, then that VPD will be far lower, in the sense it will be 1. If the difference is higher, then the VPD will be 3, 4, 5, 6. This means it's dry humidity. That's why there's a value of the research which you're doing, how to get rid of the humidity. So plant is working. I think that's the terminology. Root pressure, pumping action of roots to transport water from roots to leaf, fruit or wherever needed. Primarily, water is pumped through the roots by that transpiration pull. So the water is lost from the leaves, so a transpiration pull is increased. But about 5% is the root pressure. So that your last watering is 4 p.m., sunset at 6 p.m., and so you stop dropping your night temperature and roots are still pumping water. And that's where that problem of edema on geranium will come in. So root pressure will still could be there. This is that graph. I think if you like, I could send you a copy or post on the website. It's a very simple one. If your computer doesn't do that, then basically moisture deficit or vapor deficit is depending on humidity and temperature. This side is relative humidity. This side is the demand for moisture in grams, and this side is air temperature. So there is a direct relationship between humidity and temperature. For each change in 1 degree centigrade temperature, humidity will be 5% higher or lower. So because with the temperature higher, air ability to hold moisture is higher. So remember this formula, 1 degree centigrade change, 5% change in. So if you look at this VPD graph, what I call, this is the area for rooting of cuttings, young plants right here. So this means the temperature anywhere 20 to 27 degrees centigrade, and the moisture deficit will be lower, so that leaves don't undergo stress. When you want to establish the plant after transplanting, then our moisture deficit is going a little higher, and then rapid growth phase. So combined with temperature and humidity, understanding this role of water is important. At this time, I'd like to introduce the term parts per million. Was there another handout, Judy, on?
I haven't. We're short two of the.
There were other smaller handouts.
That's this one?
This is the big one.
No.
There was a smaller one on from Greenhouse, Canada. Is it part of the staple there? Or do you have
It
that?
should be a part of this one. No, not in that one. It should be this package.
Okay. There are two articles from Greenhouse, Canada I wrote on this subject.
Those packages will be on the website. We're short.
Okay. All right. So basically, I find that there is a fear factor of making a wrong calculation, but take that fear out, and we'll actually make a calculation later on as well. At this time, I just want to say parts per million is a measure of concentration. One part of a chemical in a million parts of something. When we say our carbon dioxide in the air, there was a recent report, it has jumped to 399 parts per million. So this means 399 parts of carbon dioxide in a million part of air. So in water, we are saying 1 part of any chemical in the 1 million parts of something, 1 milliliter in 1 million milliliter, 1 gram in 1 million gram, 1 gram in 1000 kilogram. So part per million, sometimes we say milligrams per liter. When the lab sends you the results, you say milligram per liter is parts per million, because the 1 liter is 1000 milliliter, and that's 1000 grams, and that's a million milligrams. So remember, it is a measure of concentration, not an absolute weight. You will also find a reference to millimoles as well. Some of the advanced growers who are getting 300 cucumbers per square meter or very high production, they understand, instead of part per million, moles and millimoles. Simply taking the milligrams per liter, multiplying by atomic weight, or equivalent weight, and then getting, that's basically how much is there. Part per million is a concentration. So what's the weight of calcium there? What's the weight of potassium there? So that is the terminology, and these formulas. For example, if you have a nitrate, you converting it to parts per million, the factor is 14. So 140 parts per million or milligram per liter of nitrogen is 10 millimoles, and then trace element is a micromole. Just be familiar with the terminology. You might be reading something on the internet, it says moles and micromoles. How to calculate an easy formula to remember. There are many formulas around. The simplest one which I use, and it could be right here. Just remember one thing, that's all. 1 gram per liter of water. So 1 gram, 1 liter ratio. So if you could remember that and a factor of 10. So 1 gram per liter and a factor of 10, that's all you need to remember. So 1 gram of 20-20-20 in 1 liter of water will equal to, multiply by 10, 200 nitrogen, 200 phosphate, 200 potash. So we'll talk more, we'll make an actual calculation, but this is the simplest formula. 1 gram per liter of fertilizer, just multiply the grade of the fertilizer by 10. An example is here that if you take 1 gram of 20-20-20 in 1 liter of water, it will equal to 200 ppm nitrogen, 200 phosphate, 200 potash. So 1 gram per liter and a factor of 10, that's all. There are some fascinating facts about water as well, the physical property. Did you know that it takes 500 kilograms of water to move through a plant to make 1 kilogram of dry matter. So just a couple of days before coming here, I phoned a tomato and a cucumber grower. Could you tell me that how long the tomato vine is? Right now they are starting with the new crop, so they are cleaning up. So it could be anywhere 40 feet of tomato vine, 40, 50 feet of cucumber vine. So I asked them to take and could you wait for me so that I could predict that how much water you used to make that wine. So it's a lot of water is used through the plant to transport nutrients. Water is lost to the air and nutrients are retained by that. It takes 50 liters of water to make 1 kilogram of tomatoes. So 60 kilogram if you're getting times 50 liters, so that means 3,000 liters per plant were used to make those ones. So that is quite a bit of water. So this means if you have 10,000 plants or 5,000 plants, you could calculate how much water storage capacity to need for a day or for 2 days or for a week. The chemical structure, 2 hydrogen atoms and 1 oxygen atom, remember the H2O, is structurally simple yet biologically is very profound. And that's important for us from an understanding obtained by the plant. The lack of symmetry in the water molecule produces polarity, a positive charge at one end of the molecule and a negative on the other end. So the oxygen is just very rapidly going around the hydrogen, and that's why it's in liquid form. The bipolar electrical charge creates an intense attraction between the hydrogen and adjacent oxygen, and this hydrogen bonds are responsible for most of water amazing product. That's why it's a very good solvent. That's why it causes ionization. So the force of hydrogen bond is 21 billion times that of gravity. That's why water is one of nature's most stable compounds. It is liquid because of strong hydrogen bonding. The strong polarity of the water molecule causes them to surround dissolved ions. Water is so effective dissolving other compounds, it is almost impossible to find chemically pure in nature. Even if you have a reverse osmosis water, you check it is EC and pH and let it stay there for a few hours, it will absorb carbon dioxide from the air and the pH will start dropping and EC will start going higher. So even very pure water could these things will happen to that. I just want you to understand the awful power of water because we are using it to grow our plants. The high dielectric constant is biologically important because water carries mineral nutrients, organic products of photosynthesis. So it's not only that it is taking all the dissolved nutrient from the roots to the top, it has to transport the food it made to the root zone. What the plant does is that under light condition, it is making what we call glucose, that's C6H12O6. But then plant is in a rush. Plant exactly know that based on light a day before, it can't predict how much light will be there, but based on the information a day before, plant knows that I have 10 hours of sunlight. So what it does is, it keeps on making the glucose, but it has to store it in such a way that it is efficient inside the cell. So what it does is, it converts into starches and carbohydrates, and then stores it inside the cell. And the practical implication for us is that by about 11 o'clock, if the sun is there about 4 or 5 hours, the leaf color should change. Nighttime respiration, the leaf color should be slightly lighter. And I put some picture in one of the Greenhouse Canada issue on peppers. It's simply because that food has been used, and then by 11 o'clock, the plant should have enough food stored, it should change the color. If the color is not changing, then it means that your watering practices, your temperature practices need to be looked at, that why that color is not changing. This means they are storing for longer time and plant cannot do the photosynthesis then. So if plant cannot do the photosynthesis, we don't need more water and minerals. So that color change is quite important. it dissolves the oxygen, carbon dioxide. So negative part of this dielectric constant is water absorbs ions and leaches them from the growing media, salts from foliage. Excessive leaching of nitrate, phosphate, and pesticide can cause environmental pollution. Water is unique, having maximum density at 4 degrees, so that's why ice floats. Liquid water expands when it freezes, so succulent seedling tissue can be instantly killed by a relatively minor radiation frost. Irrigation pipes and pump can be ruined if they're not properly drained or filled with antifreeze. Very high latent heat of vaporization. 500 calories of heat are required to evaporate 1 gram of water. Evaporative cooling in plants. Then 80 calories of heat are released when 1 gram of water freezes. That's why seedling can be protected from frost with irrigation. Whenever we see frost in California on oranges, that's what they do. Water, 4 degrees Celsius, has the maximum solubility of oxygen. As the temperature rises, the solubility goes down. Oxygen drip level, oxygen growing media, wet and dry cycle and oxygen, water holding capacity, air porosity. All those newer growing media which are designed high porosity. Perlite is very porous, high porosity, more oxygen in there. So when you choose a growing media, you've got to know these things as well. Relationship with oxygen, water temperature. So here is the temperature rising. So from about 11, 12 part per million at 4 degrees centigrade at 24, 26, and this happened in summer. The moment the oxygen levels in water drops below 4 part per million, that will cause root rot. So that's so important. What happened is that, and even if you're using a growing media, and in the growing media, the logistics of oxygen is different than if you're using pure hydroponics floating system. If your plants are growing in water, then it will be different than in a growing media. The dynamic is such that you put water in there. Let's say had an oxygen of, if the temperature is 4 degrees centigrade, oxygen 9 ppm. But you raise it to 18 degrees centigrade, it will be 6, 7 part per million. That's perfect. But through the growing media, it could go down because of the root require oxygen, so it could absorb, and in the leach coming out, it could be 4 part per million. So a good oxygen meter, like a PHEC meter, if you're growing good crops, then it is a good investment. This is one experiment we did with lettuce in a floating hydroponic system. So when the oxygen was about 7 part per million, perfect root system. And look at the head. When we drop the oxygen to 3 part per million, this is what happened. Oxygen less than 1 part per million, just all the roots are rotting. How do you create oxygen deficiency conditions? I did ask some chocolates, didn't get to give you to answer this question. No, maybe
You want me to
tomorrow.
go get them?
That's for tomorrow, I was told.
So what water temperature is too high? Is one which would create oxygen deficiency.
That is one thing, but I'm looking for a more specific answer. But, I mean, so
No.
there's some easier answer.
Failure of the air stone if you're not oxygenating the water.
No, still more. Who loves sugar cravings? Do you crave sugar, anybody? Just add some sugar into water, and all the bacterial growth will eat up oxygen. So that's how we created the deficiency. If you want to demonstrate a science experiment, just add some sugar. On the other hand, use of sugar has some other benefit as well. In a situation like an atrium, like here, if the conductivity salt level is very high, you give them a sugar solution, it will promote bacteria. They will eat up that salt and bring the conductivity down. That's maybe for the guests for some time, but not do that. So understand this logic of oxygen in the growing media. Water law condition, biological activity will also cause, if there's a lot of organic matter, in your water, it will cause oxygen deficiency, organic matter decomposes, bacterial growth, and use of sugar solution to provide food for bacteria. In cucumber, this is how it looks like. Proper oxygen. This is controlled. Extra oxygen when we added, it reduces up to 13 parts per million, and when we had low oxygen, this is what happens. Now, high specific heat and the thermal conductivity, temperature rises or lower more slowly than other material, which gives water's greatest temperature buffering properties. So buffer temperature changes in plants. High surface tension due to strong hydrogen bonding. This lowers evaporation and creates strong capillary retention in a growing media and plant cells. So inside the water, inside the cell, it does that. Now this is a very interesting example. This pumpkin seedling survived frost. Why? Normally, at -1 for a couple of days, they'll be gone. This is from Trevor. He'll be talking tomorrow. Trevor Schreiber from Winnipeg. He sent me this. This is a totally unsolicited. I do help him with different things. So what happened is that here's the email. This beautiful pumpkin plant survived 2 nights of frost at 0 and -1 thanks to your fertilizer formulation, which I followed very carefully. In my experience, those temperatures would have almost frozen squash, pumpkin transplant before. Thanks to your, I saved over $500,000 of crop. Well done, Dr. Miller. So, I mean, just as a normal practice that when you're growing seedling for field transplanting, the formula which I use is that I start using calcium right from the beginning, 1052-10 plus calcium right from the beginning. And 2 weeks before transplanting outside, they are getting high calcium, high potassium, and magnesium, no phosphorus. So what it does is, the electrical conductivity or salt level inside the cell changes. Exactly when we have salt on the roads, the freezing point changes. It lowers. So same thing happened in the, so a hardening formula for bedding plants, when you want to move them into the cold frame, I always suggest that you go on a hardening program, and we will talk a little bit more later on as well. But that's what happened. The salt level, EC level, goes higher inside the cell, and the freezing point changes. So, yes?
Can we just back up for 1 sec? You showed, no, you don't need to, but the oxygen, you mentioned how to decrease the oxygen.
Right.
What are good ways to increase the oxygen?
Yeah. The one I like, which I tested, was an oxygen machine. There's a company called SeaAir, SEAIR, on the internet. You could check it out. There must be other companies as well. What they do is that they split the water in a chamber to very fine micron size, and the oxygen then is dissolved and diffuses in the water. Yeah, so I think the SeaAir is one company which we tested to produce higher oxygen, and that oxygen is simply, here's your tank of water, and then there's a unit like this. It will go in there, very high pressure injection into that cylinder, and what the oxygen comes out is over 13, 15 parts per million. So it could be, so, and that oxygen is stable for quite a bit of time. So it is, so I think it would be very good to look into those possibilities. If any reason you want help, just email me or Glenn. We work together on this. That answer your question?
Yeah.
So 4 major influences in growth. Plant constitute up to 95% of fresh weight in water. Is an important part of protoplasm that fills every living cell. Dehydration first slows metabolic process, followed by dormancy, then death. Universal solvent, distribute gases. So we have talked a little bit on that. Are you okay? You want to have 5 minutes break? You're awake? Fine? Good. Let's continue. So is a reactant as well. Biochemical reaction we talked about is involved in maintenance of turgidity, like the stomata. Plants are leaky, so to capture the very low amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, 500 kilogram of water is lost to produce, we talked about this one. And the water we apply for irrigation is used to keep this tomato open so that carbon dioxide would get in. Now, water quantity is always a constant issue when you're planning a new greenhouse project, how much water I need to store it. So water requirements can vary between almost 0.1 to 7 liters of water per square meter per day. 7 liters is more for the cucumbers, tomatoes. Cucumbers are very high water users. Bedding plants generally are in the middle, about 3 liters, 4 liters. Varies according to plant species, plant size, relative humidity, solar radiation, heating and rate of ventilation. Hand watering influences quantities applied because you're wasting more as well. And those of you interested, a formula is if you have a computer to measure the sunlight, so far is a factor of 1 to 3. So if you have a 1000 joules of light, then you need 3 liters per square meter, and can be higher up to 5 liters per square meter per day. So if you don't have a light meter, then you have to depend on your own experience that all the vegetable growers who are far more advanced, they go automatic watering. Joules is a unit of energy, sun energy, and it is accumulated. We have watts per square meter unit, we have foot candles, it's fairly complicated, but joule is one unit which is fairly common. And some of these simple computers now have that solar capabilities that you could see how much light has accumulated, and watering is done based on the amount of sunlight. So for planning purposes, we say for cucumbers about 8,000 cubic meters per year per hectare. So those sort of figures are available. The total annual requirement for year-round greenhouse exceeds the annual rainfall, so we need water from other sources. Water quality depends on several factors as well: growing system, drain to waste or wasters recirculating, good drainage for leaching, types of crops grown, other uses of water like misting, washing of produce. So you plan accordingly. Water sources: well water, dugout, pond, irrigation canal, directly from river, creek. So we need storage for winter. Typically, this is roof greenhouses. They have 2 dugouts like this. This is greenhouse. So even the recycled water comes back here and cleaned up probably biologically with some of the weeds and algae growing around. In the survey we did, that's what we found here. 26% they use dugout pond, 38% well water, 31% municipal water, and 5% river in our survey. When we go to the quality, this was interesting information. Now, sodium is not a plant nutrient. When you saw the Jeff presentation, there was no mention of sodium. It's not a plant nutrient, but it's so close to potassium that plant could take it, but pretty soon it realizes something wrong has happened. Lower leaves start turning yellow. But the interesting thing is that 66% of you guys didn't know what your sodium level is. So I think you better get your water tested. At least you know how your sodium level is. 9% recycle water, 91% don't recycle, 36% drip irrigation, 55% hand watering, 9% overhead sprinkler. So very useful information has come out of this survey for planning purposes, that in future there's no big pressure to recycle water, but as a good citizen we should start looking at not throwing that water, which is many growers, small growers, they collect that water and then use for their garden as well. But if you have an acreage, then it goes there as well. So there are many good ways to dispose of that so-called wastewater. 48% use dosatron, 21% others, 35% none. Water and reuse environment, I talked about that 1 degree change in temperature, 5% humidity. Now dew point, the Glenn talked this morning as well, is become a very serious issue when you drop the temperature very rapidly from day to night. Because to do that respiration, plant need a lower temperature at night time. So if the temperature is very high like daytime, then the plant will get very leggy, very soft, is susceptible to diseases. So dew can be formed when raising the temperature in the daytime. Examples of free water. This picture was taken on 11:27 a.m. on February 21. If this water doesn't dry out by sunset, then chance of having gray mold botrytis is very high. So make sure that, and if this water is cold, then there's further stress on the plant. So if you're rooting, you're cutting this good. Careful. Water and diseases, free water, condensation, gray mold, PHMA root sore, water fungus, gummy stem blight. Most of the diseases have a direct relationship with the water. This grower sent me a sample, water dripping from roof. So he was dropping his night temperature from day very rapidly, and there was quite humidity, so dew was being formed. And this is how the grain mold looks like. This black and a lot of spores will come on. Water shortage, wilting. This happened with Betty Plus people. This date is 11th of April. So by that time, I think you're tired, you're expecting customers come, your plants are growing, you don't know how to keep them in check, you're in panic. So this is an overgrown tomatoes plant, but of course have been now watered. Smaller container, very big plant, so they start drying out. Now, interestingly, what happened is that the electrical conductivity of salt will go higher because water is lost. And then this is a generative signal for the plant. So when you stress them like this means the vegetative stage is gone in plant. And if you do it a couple of times, then it will be difficult to revert it. Some growers use mild water stress as a growth regulator. So knowing the wilting point of your growing media is important. So you just take the plant you're growing and take the saturated weight and then let it dry out and say, normally what will happen is most of the plants we are growing, about 60% saturated weight will be the wilting point in most of the cases. So knowing that is very, very important. Now this is wilting on a grand scale, I call it. So all the hanging basket tomatoes were put here. I thought that was a wrong decision to do that. Light is high, temperature is high, constant feeding with every watering, EC goes high. It was over 5 millimoles. High EC, pH become acidic, and plants are very generative, and ultimately they start showing a lot of water stress in them. Hanging baskets are always higher, so different water needs, more light, high temperature. If on a standard field, EC will go very high. And these will be dark green and shorter. They may not wilt, but if the hanging basket new growth is very dark green in color, smaller leaves, this means the conductivity has gone very high in there. Water legislation, dugout, leached water, how much water can be taken from rivers. So your ministry and Glenn probably could help. So let's take a 5 minutes, just break, stay here, and then we'll start with the water chemical quality. And I also need a sip of water. That is not too cold.
We're working with roosters, is that correct?
Yeah.
And Red Door?
Yeah.
And what are you doing there with them?
I just installed yeah, right. Previously we just installed 2 chambers in roosters, and later we just amplify it.
Yeah.
Speed cycle.
because the house is
Nope, just you.
so very big units. The farmers are very from
Okay.
yeah, it's a very big unit.
Did any of you bring your own water analysis? We did request, but maybe it didn't reach you.
The loss rate was dramatically decreased, like by 20%.
And so we're using a cold condensates onto the inside the unit, and then the water. And then are you reusing that water?
No, we don't.
Did you gain any height?
And also we use the hot air. Because of the
So anyone that didn't get a full package of the handouts, they will be available on our website, on the City Green Insurance website.
Just wondering what you're doing No, I work with a professional gardener, and we sell soil. We sell the soil media to
That is why when I have my
so you read it
Yeah, that's the idea.
That's right, yeah. It's called a grow bag.
They come out of the.
We supply them.
So I go and I autoclave my solution.
Yeah.
Already.
Yeah, so like for this,
The oxygen will be gone.
So it's not like fixed that I will try to use the nuclear power plant. I also have
All right, we are back on track. So, I think you have seen the handout. There's a lot of good information there. We will use it when we calculate our fertilizers. So, do browse for it. At this time, we are going to go into understanding water, chemical quality. One thing I pointed out that most of the growers we surveyed didn't know what was the sodium level. In the sodium, as I mentioned, could be very detrimental to the growth. So analysis for greenhouse irrigation, I think ASL Lab now does a good job. Don't use cold bottles or jam jars. The plaster bottles will come from labs. Private labs have to pay for the analysis. But generally, labs sometimes are not familiar. Tell them you need analysis for greenhouse irrigation. So most of the time they will understand it's different than a farm soil or for the for health use as well. Many times, if you have old analysis from the county on health purposes, the level they recommend will be different. Sodium, for example, for health purpose, they say 300 ppm is okay, but it's too high for plants. So if something is too high for plants, I think we should not go with high sodium. So even for drinking water, try to stay below 100 part per million. So once the results come back, this is how they may look like. They will give you information on pH. In this case, it was 8.65. They will give you this electrical conductivity. They will give you as a microsiemens, and you divide it by 1,000, that will be millisiemens. We generally use millimos, millisiemens. So electrical conductivity is basically opposite of ohms. When you build this electrical system here, there is a resistance called ohms, OHMS. So your reverse is mhos, MHOS. That's not opposite of my name, Muhyiddin, but it is mhos. So what happens is that conductivity is a measure of electrical conductance. So if you have distilled water and put two electrodes, negative or positive, the current would not run through it. But if you put a little bit of salt, fertilizer, the current will start running through it. So that's called conductivity. So it is a good general measure of how much nutrient might be present here. So in your water, we prefer the conductivity to be below 0.8 millisiemens. This should be not, micro will be 800. Sodium in this case was 314 milligrams per liter. It should be less than 100. Potassium, generally potassium is not a big issue. Calcium, magnesium was very low here. And then you will also see this term, sodium absorption ratio, SAR. Now SAR is they take the sodium level divided by calcium, magnesium under root, and they come with this. Basically what I mean is, if you use that water, how quickly will it take time to build up so much sodium that it will cause damage to the plant. So SAR should be less than 4. Hardness, calcium carbonate, they give 5 milliequivalent, so it's not part per million, but actual weight in those by atomic weight. Bicarbonates, they will give you iron as well, manganese, boron, sulfate, chloride, and then at the end they will use the term cation, sum, and anion. So cations are negative charge, anions are positive charge, so it should be equal. If the analysis is good, that should be pretty close, 1 or 1.1. So that's called ion balance. So it was 13.78 cation, 13.24 anion, so it's a pretty good analysis. So this is how it will come out. So pH can be adjusted. It's just amazing that with the bedding plant growers, if I have to point out a single issue, that will be pH adjustment. And the reason is that pH is on a logarithmic scale. What I mean is a hydrogen ion concentration. So if it's a pH of 7, it will be 1 trillion hydrogen ion. pH 6, it will be, what's below trillion? Million? Billion. It will be billion. Then it comes million. So it will drop, and also goes the same way. If the pH is 40, then the hydroxyl ions. So hydrogen ions in that water. So the pH becomes very difficult to change. But I'll show you some picture what happened. And then there are some plants which change the pH themselves. So I'll show you those pictures as well. So one thing you must learn, adding acid to bring the pH down, like in this case the pH was 8.65 and the alkalinity is very high. This is very high. So out of this, so many bicarbonate, we have to neutralize almost 500 milligram out of it with the acid. So when we add acid, it will neutralize the bicarbonates and bring the pH down. But the process is, because it's logarithmic, so the pH could drop very rapidly. And that's where I've seen growers causing problem to their crops. So we'll talk a little bit on that. So I'll must prepare a pH curve. It's logarithmic. Bicarbonates affect pH changes. Bicarbonate need to be neutralized. Very pure water, like reverse osmosis. Then you have to add some bicarbonate if you're using reverse osmosis water to give some buffering. So here are the pH curves. We are more interested in our case where water is more alkaline and you are adding acid. So what happens is that pH will start dropping as the volume of the acid is increasing, but suddenly a point will come when it will drop very rapidly. So we need to know that point. So what it simply means is, if you have a pH meter with you, and I think all of you should have it, doesn't matter you're a small grower or big grower, make sure you buy one before you leave from the trade show, and tell them I recommended it so that I get a discount which will go to the SCGA. So imagine that you have a 4-liter bucket. So you put a known amount of acid, and always start with, let's say, 1 mil, 2 mil, and then measure the pH. So make a graph like this, then add 2 mil, 3 mil, 4 mil, until you reach that point where the levels start dropping. Otherwise, what will happen is if you don't know this point, then you set up an injector, and then the pH accidentally could drop. And pH will damage the more serious if you're growing hydroponic system. If you have a lot of peat moss and calcium in the system, then it will be less damaging. But in raw pool, it will kill the crop. Did you get what I'm saying? Yes.
How quick does the acid react? Because you said test it.
Yeah, immediate.
It's right away.
Right away. Any other question? So you understand what I'm saying? If rarely you add more acid, then either throw that water, but if it's not practical, then you have to add potassium bicarbonate back or sodium hydroxide to bring it back. So that curve will be opposite of the other one. So you've got to know that. Acid amount in your water is in the handles as well. That basically you need to maintain at least 50 part per million bicarbonate in the water for buffering. You don't want to neutralize it. So to neutralize 60 part per million of bicarbonates, you need 37% nitric acid, 13.8 milliliters per 100 liters of water. 61% nitric acid, 8.4. 75% phosphoric acid, 8. 85% 7. For each 60 part per million. So if you have got 600 part per million and you want to neutralize 500 out of it, so you use this as a base unit. Citric acid need to be worked out in every situation because we don't know what his acidity factor is. So acid injection rate for pH adjustment, that table, I don't think it is in the handout, but it could be made available. So here is the bicarbonate part per million, amounts to remove 62% nitric acid. So I think those tables are available on the internet as well if you type this word. So 50 part per million we need to keep. So if you have got 300 ppm, 250 milliliter per 100 liter. So this is the amount of acid. And if you're using an injector system, then this acid, don't add it with calcium nitrate tank. It has to be added with the other tank, and we'll talk a little bit more on that. So the main thing is that pH has to be adjusted of your water. Many growers don't use injector. They have a big storage tank, so they could adjust the pH right, and it's much easier there.
You were saying that if it was RO water, you'd have to add the 50?
At least 50 part per million.
How would you do that?
Yeah, remember that bicarbonate that formula?
Yeah.
Part per million? So that's the formula we'll use. So this simply means that if you buy potassium bicarbonate, it has got 12% potassium and about 20% HCO3.
Okay.
So using that 1 gram per liter will give you 20 times 10, 200 ppm.
Oh, cool.
2 grams per liter will give you, right?
Right. That's perfect.
Yeah. So don't trust the calculation on pH. Still you have calculated, but if you're running through the system, do monitor what comes at the drip line. If your drippers get plugged up, if you're using, what I have found that the sun growers use pH adjusted water before going to fertilizer injector, herbicide injector, but the lost watering could be a pH 3 solution to clean up the lines. As long as you're using peat moss or coconut fiber, so it will keep the drip lines clean. All right, practical demo of pH required by different plants. So what do you see here? Can you see it here, or light is not so good?
Low pH.
Yeah. Practical demo of pH required by different. So what happened here? This is what is that? IV geranium? Yeah, looks like. So already it is showing some chlorosis, and this is the typical iron deficiency. So what it means is, the young leaves are affected, the veins are green and intervening area turning yellow, so the pH likely will be 7 in this one. I don't know what this plant is, can anyone recognize here? So they combine the wrong plant if you don't know the pH of the, how do they behave. So that was not saleable basket. Low pH and basal leaves in hydroponic system. If the pH start going below 5, then the uptake of trace element is about 4 times higher. So this is the excess of iron, manganese and other nutrients. And this happens to every plant. And I'll show you a list of plants which we need to know, which will sensitive to pH. So combining in the hanging basket, you got to know what the pH will be like. So never combine geranium with a petunia, because geranium make the pH quite acidic, and the lower leaves start turning yellow, and then petunias, they make the pH more alkaline. pH of 5 on tomatoes, so this could cause a damage like this, almost scorching. It always start on the edges and then move inward, so that simply the roots got burned. pH alkaline, above 6.5 in tomatoes, this is what you will get. Typical iron deficiency, manganese as well. The young leaves affected, veins are green and intraveinal area yellow. So that's a typical pH issue, and no amount of foliar feed will correct it. It has to be done through the roots. Iron deficiency due to pH over 6.8, very beautiful hanging baskets. And once they become whitish in color, then it will take awfully long time to turn them around. So it has to be corrected far before that. So if you have a sharp eye, keen eye, you could see it just starting. A little bit of yellowness, that's the time to check the pH. So if you monitor the pH regularly, then this problem could be avoided. Active root growth will increase the pH in the growing media. Loss of roots due to heavy fruit load. Sorry, there should be fruit. Severe leaf removal or low light will decrease the pH. So what happened many times that geraniums are outgrown, it was a cloudy weather, and you then start removing those leaves to make them saleable, then the pH will start getting more acidic. Growing media pH and fertilizer pH, root respond to feed pH more simply because we are watering them with that solution. Roots and watering practices. This is a reflection of a good watering. The date is 3rd of October. So that's a nice root system, still white in color. So this means this grower, I could look at the roots and tell how good you are. In last Greenhouse Canada issue, I wrote an article, put your best foot forward. I think, so that's we'll talk tomorrow a little bit more as well. That we could, it's a reflection of your personality from the roots. What type of person? This is a good grower. I like him. He takes me for lunches. Roots staying at top, white. There was no heat in the greenhouse in early season of poinsettias. Cooler at the bottom of the pot and also cold water used. So they stayed right here and then they started moving from there. Roots on one side. This happens when one side is warm. So if the greenhouse is oriented such a way that south side of the pot is exposed, you knock every pot out, there's no roots on this side. Everything is here. And this affects the symmetry of the plant. The branch which will be on the south side will be weaker. So difficult to package and will be not a good quality plant. Thick roots. This is where the growers start using calcium to start with. I'm a big promoter that we should start using calcium nitrate right from the beginning on the seedling, even when we're giving them phosphorus. So we'll talk a little bit more when we design our programs. But nice thick root is a strong calcium present and a little bit higher EC. Root rot, water logging, so if you're not careful and don't realize that if the water is not taken up by plant, then the root rot will occur. So watch for these conditions and then fungus start coming in. This is on the top of the plot look like. This is the root of that plant. Early roots, good uniform watering. This is a picture I took on 14th of August. This is how they should look like. Nice, this is the bottom here and the top. Good, nice, thick roots are there. From 3 growers, bedding plant growers, I took some samples for them to look at their watering practices. So these are the 3 same age, same geraniums, similar timings. And when I wash the roots, this is how they look like. So how watering practices affected roots. Also note how, so this is a very poor root and very generative plant. More flowers. But the moment you sell it, it's going to collapse. And then they will come back with a complaint. This is in the middle right here. This is a very good root system. So this simply means that grower is doing a good job. So follow up what you sell once in a while. Go to the customers, if you know them, or even not that, hey, I sold this plant, you could have a look at it. I think that would be a very good public relation to do. So this is important to know that very poor root development is a very strong generator signal on the plant. So making now decisions on your water, EC values below 0.8 millisiemen and sodium absorption ratio of less than 4, that's a good quality water. This means that long-term use will not cause you any C. diff problems. EC values above 0.8, below 2.0 millisiemen, water becomes marginal and need special management practices to use this water. And those practices are good drainage of the medium, regular leaching, frequent testing of the growing media, because within a month you will notice that the salt will start building up, sodium will start building up, and then the plant will become too generative and very poor roots will be there. EC over 2, water not suitable, and this is what nature has designed. So don't try to smart the nature. I think those are the laws of God, laws of nature. So if the sodium is higher, EC is higher, it's not going to work. It will work for 2 weeks, and then sodium will start building up, and then you will see lower leaf turning yellow. EC also very important from plant growth viewpoint. Higher the EC, less water is available for plant growth. And water EC and fertilizer EC add up together. Now, this fact can also be used to our advantage if we are growing crops in winter. Those growers who grow tomatoes in winter. So this is a technique which we use, that the seedlings are grown at a higher conductivity, which is come from use of potassium sulfate fertilizer. So EC could go as high as 7, 8 millimoles. What it does is, if you're growing your seedling in a soilless media, rock wood or something, there's unlimited water and nutrients. So you can't create any water stress on them. So plant will become leggy. By the time plant in the greenhouse, they'll be that big, and the first flower is opening right here at about 4 feet. So what you do is that you start fertilizing them with a higher EC coming from potash, potassium sulfate. And what it does is, potash creates a osmotic pressure on the roots, but potash is a very useful thing. Plant could absorb a lot of potash and then could store it without causing any damage. There's no toxicity of potash known. I've not seen it yet. So it could be stored inside the leaves and then moved upward as the plant needed. So
Excuse me, what about the phosphorus.
Yeah, phosphorus remain constant. It's just the potash, potassium sulfate. So only two ions. Sulfates are highly leachable. That potash will come from potassium sulfate. So phosphorus is not touched. High EC water plus fertilizer. This grower was using growing basil on flood benches, and when I was calling to look at that, look at this damage on the leaf, and when I checked the conductivity, the conductivity is 6.7 meters.
Leaching?
Pardon me?
It's leaching?
Yeah, he was not leaching. But it was, now many growers in Alberta are switching over to flood irrigation system. They are easy to manage, but then the total logistic changes. When you are hand watering or drip irrigation, you are watering from the top to the bottom, some leaching will take place. If you are using flood benches, then the nutrient will come at the top. So much so that the conductivity will be higher at the top and lower in the middle and lowest. So the roots will have a tendency just to come down. But then it could cause damage. So it was a very high EC for this purpose. So a good meter, and you leach the water through here, and then you test it. This is very useful information. Any nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium present in water, these elements are usually added. Generally, if the nitrogen is too high in your water, well water, that's a mean there's a contamination. So if your water is a pond water, dugout water, and nitrate is 100 part per million, this means that a septic tank is leaking or animal manure is coming in. So we don't want that nitrate. In Germany, I was visiting a few years ago, and the nitrate was over 150 part per million. And for drinking, that's absolutely no-no. Nitrate will cause those blue babies. So those symptoms, so watch for these ones. Calcium and magnesium, all of the calcium in water is not available for plant growth. That contribute to hardness. Bicarbonates, we've talked enough about them. High bicarbonate, if you don't adjust the pH of your water, then that's what will happen. So this means the carbonates are very high, so the pH was high, so it will deposit, and that will affect the photosynthesis of the plants as well. Specific ion, sodium, we talked about, not required, it's toxic to the plant. The important thing is that the growing media will get waterlogged, and then the root rot will set in. Sulfates, generally very high in most of the well water supply, but they are easy to leach. So then we have got iron. If it's in a ferric farm, then that will cause rust in the pipes and other systems. Plug emitters, iron bacteria can be removed through iron filters or chlorination or iron peroxide. Copper, fluoride, silicon. Fluoride toxic over 1 part per million, especially to lilies and dracaenas. So watch that. Silicon, about 5 ppm desirable. Aluminum can affect the uptake of phosphorus. Boron, Jeff mentioned quite a bit on that. It could become toxic. Should be carefully checked. Zinc can be toxic when water is collected from the galvanized frame. Generally, if that's the case, then we don't use ready-made fertilizer. We make your own, because zinc could become toxic. And always remember, manganese is different than magnesium. Magnesium, if you use 1 pound per 100 gallons, you are okay. Manganese will kill the plant. So, and we have seen those kind of mistakes being done. A grower sent me this picture recently, very interesting. Very experienced growers, he sent me this picture and I said, what is it? I looked at the picture and I said, it's a boron deficiency. Peppers need boron in the feed around 1 part per million. In this case, it was around 0.25. So adjustment had to be made in the fertilizer program. So a lot of things could happen very quickly. Water contamination, too close to dairy, elk farming, possibilities of E. coli, big focus on food safety. Even on the restaurant menu, they say that watch for food safety, E. coli could come, salmonella could come with the eggs. If the hotel restaurant is warning you, this way you have to be careful. Watch for any potential pesticide contamination, water and personal hygiene, handling vegetables. Herbicide contamination is a very big issue. Every conference I come here, I emphasize this point, but still is there. Very big, real and serious problem, loss of crop, spraying from the ditches by the counties, growers bringing water from other dumpers without knowing, trucks used for watering was contaminated, drift from sprays, contaminated compost because of grass clipping. I found herbicide in a well-reputed company, Best Garden Soil Product. It took time to convince them I think this was a company selling their mixes in a bedding plant garden center. And one of my researchers had this and called me to see what was going on. So it was picloram. If you don't know what the symptom looks like, that's how they look like. That's a picloram damage. Put in your memory bank these pictures, your bedding plots. Bioassay is always a good idea. Simply grow some tomatoes or lentils and grow them. They will give you right away. Control is your regular good quality water, which you know is free of herbicide, and this is how this should be done regularly. What to do if herbicide is found? Charcoal filters, they have to be monitored. That's absolutely essential. Algae in pond can deplete oxygen, so you have to be careful as well. Chemical treatment, Putrin Plus is a copper sulfate, so we could use that. In greenhouse, algae control is still a challenge. It could cause fungus gnats to grow. There is a fungus growing as well. So algae has to be controlled. This is not a Saskatchewan greenhouse. This is on plug trays. Begonias take awfully long time, so algae could cause so many problems. Water storage has essential. Microbial contamination, Pythium, Fusarium, fecal coliform, E. coli, all sort of things are there. Sand filtration, use of chlorine about 5 parts per million. Ozone is making it come back now. Heat pasteurization, hydrogen peroxide. 300 ppm of hydrogen peroxide for 30 minutes will inactivate fungal spore. This means holding tank for 300 ppm you normally don't give to the plants. So you have a storage tank and treat them right there. Distillation, deionization, reverse osmosis, water softener, chemical treatments, organic enzyme, sand filters look like this. UV disinfection is getting quite popular now. So water quality varies throughout the province. Hard water and soft water, a chemical analysis is required. A specific recommendation is needed to interpret water quality, and keep in touch with people like Glenn or myself. Water delivery based on light, 3x the amount, we talked about it. Frequent watering and leaching. EC management in the growing media. pH management, we talked about. Hand watering and multitasking, this is Michael when he was young. He's young now as well. Hand watering still is quite common. Hose on, injector system, Smith, Anderson. Now, I'd like you to carefully look at these. If you're using a single head injector, and then you use calcium nitrate every second day or every third day, in my opinion, that's not a good practice. Calcium is needed right away. Calcium is so stubborn element that it would not move like nitrogen and others. So if you do it every second or third day, then its benefits are far less. So calcium, if there's a single injector, I don't know why growers are afraid to invest in injector, which is cheap, it's not that expensive. So this is a single injector, and Point Cynthia's had problem. So I asked this grower to put 2 injectors in, and he agreed with me, and this is what he did. And I asked him, why did you do that? There's something wrong here. He said, plumber came and did this. So what was happening, that this was feeding at 1 to 100, and the second injector was not sucking anything at all. They have to be in line. same pipe. So he was not, second was meant for calcium, so we couldn't feed any calcium. So finally, this is the proper way to hook them. And then the pressure, if your city line, your pressure was 60 psi, that's good. If lower than that, then you have trouble with proper injection, then you have to use some separate water pumps. Different injection system, stock tanks, 1 to 100, 1 to 200, that simply means that your fertilizer is 100 times stronger, or 200 times stronger. Stock tanks, some holding tanks, some growers like this one, 3 injector, acid, calcium, and the other nutrient, 3 head here, and then everything is stored there. So, and then from there it goes to the plots. Another setup, nutrient storage tank is a good idea. Modern fertilizer injectors are coming. If you have over 2 acres, then you've got to have this kind of system. High pressure pumps are coming in. You don't need those holding tanks. This is right here, one of your growers, right near Saskatchewan, very nice acid injection, calcium nitrate, potassium nitrate, magnesium sulfate, trace elements. So you could inject precisely. Yes.
Is there any rhyme or reason to the acid coming before the calcium nitrate?
It's always good to bring the pH down here, otherwise calcium will precipitate out. If your incoming water is 8.5, you inject calcium right away, inline precipitation will occur. So in this way the pH is brought to 5.8, 6.2. So always remember that we are dealing with compounds, not single element. You take calcium, it will bring nitrogen as well with it. You take potassium, but the injector ratios can be changed and adjusted as the crop goes along. High pressure leaks, you know that if something is leaking, look at all the carbonate deposit there. New method for leak detectors, you know. Let the mold grow there. Drip irrigation systems are getting quite common now. Drippers, high volume drippers are coming in. Then 2 to 3 liters per hour. Low volume pressure regulator. Dripper getting plugged up. Automatic watering system. They're getting more common now in Alberta. Even smaller growers, I think they are using very nice crop, very good quality. More simple automated systems. A view of the flood benches. These are the other flood benches, nice and clean to begin with. And if you're not careful, then ducks will swim over this. Water handling system for flood benches. Okay, we'll start right here. It's lunchtime.